A warm welcome to each one of you. This is the Naomi Talk Show with yours truly, Liz Kenywa. And kama kawaida, I like appreciating each one of you that has made it to listening to our content, to subscribing and even sharing our content with your loved ones. We truly hope that you have learned something that can make your life easier or can help you to make adjustments to do life better the way God intended us to do life. Today, we are looking at a story that I can simply say is a story of hope, resilience, and never giving up. I want you to imagine this, that you get engaged and the following day, you are involved in an accident, and from there, life takes a turn, things change. Within a minute, life throws you a new season where you have to modify how you do life, learn how to do things differently, but still manage to keep hope alive. That is a story we'll be hearing today from an amazing, amazing lady. And that is none other than Veronica Wangui. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Kindly introduce yourself further, because I've only mentioned your name.
Okay, my name is Veronica Wangui Muthoka. Yes, Muthoka is my husband. We've been married for the last 1.5 years now. Yes, and I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am a trainee advocate, a lawyer. Yes, I am a born-again believer. I should have started with that. Yes. Yes.
That's why you're here. We truly appreciate even taking time to be with us here today. And we really want to learn a lot from your story. So here we are, Vero goes home very excited. Kesho yake anaamka anaenda job.
Yeah.
And then something happened on the next day after your engagement.
Yes. So the 24th was a Sunday. So I was going back to work on the 25th. And on that day, there's something that we needed to follow up for the office in Kiambu Law Courts. So I spent the majority of my day in Kiambu Law Courts. And it was a very frustrating, because I remember I was so tired. And whatever I was following up with, like the people at the court registry were becoming very, very slow. So I remember being frustrated. So I spent like literally the majority of my day there. I only took breakfast in the morning, but I didn't even take lunch, and I had carried my lunch. So I left Kiambu like at 3, so I was getting to town like at 3:30. And I remember asking myself, do I need to go back to the office? Because my boss allows us really, that, you know, if you leave somewhere very late, it wouldn't make sense for you to leave Kiambu 3, then you're coming back to the office at 5.
So you just proceed?
Yeah, you can just go home. But now, on this particular day, because I didn't think it was going to take that long, I had not carried my bag. I had lunch in the office. And so in my head, I'm like, if I leave that lunch in the office, itaharibika. And tomorrow I'm going to have a long day. Na yo nini smell ya chakula. So I just told myself, acha niende kwa ofisi basi. And I remember it took so long, because I was getting to the matatu ya kutoka town at like 4. And I work in Kilimani. So it took so long. By the time I was even getting to the office, it was like 4:30. I get to the office, I eat my lunch, and before I know it, it's like I literally ate my lunch, 5 imefika. We live with my colleague, tunaenda town, then nimepanga matatu because I was taking a double M. Nikapanga line, because you know the way double M's are, don't know zinakwanga na line. So nikapanga line, and I remember even meeting a friend of mine on the line. Tukasalimiana, but he was on the phone. But tukapanga 2 line, tukaingia kwa gari. It was like at 6ish, and it was for me. It was the way my evenings were. I take a matatu, I'm going home, or if I'm not going home, yeah. So the matatu, it was like things were literally okay, like
very normal.
Things were normal. Like if I think about it now, there was nothing abnormal about the way things were. I really liked sitting at the window seat, because you know, you have the freedom of opening the window. Alafu, if somebody's moving, you don't have to move. So for me, honestly, I liked sitting next to the window. And then, so I sat on the right side of the bus, on the window, like 3 seats to the back, almost 3 seats to the back. So I'm seated there. And then when we are on Jogoo Road, I remember I got a call from Faustin, my husband. I don't know what, we were planning something. I think it had to be something to do with the wedding. Oh no, it had to be something with his house, because he was supposed to move to his house. And so I think he wanted my help, I think with curtains. I don't remember what it was. And I remember him asking me, ama ushuke hapo Uchumi Jogoo Road uangalie. But by that time, tulikuwa tumeshapita. Nikamwambia, I'll check for you tomorrow if I get the time. And so tunapita Uchumi, kidogo, like I had not even finished with the call. I just put the phone on my lap. The bus had going very fast, like it was very fast. And before I know it, I think the bus fell, because I don't have a recollection. To be very honest, I don't have a recollection of the falling. I just remember that it went very fast. I think it fell because I passed out for a minute or so, or 5. Yeah, so the bus fell, and the moment I'm opening my eyes, people are screaming. And because the bus fell on the side I was sitting on, people are on top of me.
Oh.
Yes. Like people are on top of me. And then, you know, because it's a whole messy situation. Everyone is struggling for their life.
Yeah.
You know, kila mtu for themselves and God for us all. So nasikia people are trying to come out. And so for me, it hits me. I need to come out of this past. And you know, when I'm trying to niniwi, I can feel blood pouring. And first of all, it was smelling blood. Because, you know, I was not the one bleeding. So everyone is bleeding. I can feel blood coming out. And then I can feel like hakuna weight on my right side. And then quickly after, I see my arm like 5 meters away from where I was. Like I could see it, ilikuwa karibu na mtaro, because the bus fell. It was taking a turn into, I forget that road.
I know that just before Hamza.
Yes.
I know that.
So it was taking a turn, kuingia kutoroka traffic. So it fell and then rolled back into Jogoo Road. So now we were there like hapo kwa, is it like a ditch or something? So I could see my arm like some meters away. Also I'm like, oh, so I don't have an arm. And so if I don't have an arm, that means if I don't leave now, I'll be the last one to leave. And people are struggling for their lives. So what do? I remember I held into the frame of the bus. Because at this point, if the glass had broken, so I held myself on the frame, pulled myself up. And by this time, people had already said, rushing. And then, thankfully, people pulled me out. I think I was among the very first people to leave the bus. Because when I pulled myself, people came, pulled me out. And then I was there, first of all, I think because I had my phone on my lap, I think it fell. And at this moment, I think adrenaline was telling me, you need to inform someone because you're going to pass out. Because I could feel I'm getting weak and my body's like I'm losing strength. So when I'm being helped out of the bus, I remember screaming, nisaideni na simu. And somebody helped me with their phone, because the last person I talked to was Faustin.
Yes.
I remember, because the person was dialing the number for me, I remember telling him the number, and because of how weak I was even losing some numbers.
Oh yeah.
So I think now when I look back, I thank God, because if I didn't make the phone call at that point, I don't think I would have been able to make the phone call at all, because I was losing consciousness. I don't know. Maybe a medic would be able to explain that. So I call him, I tell him, so we've just gotten into an accident up Hamza, Kuja. And because I knew, when we were talking with him, I knew he was with his mom in the car. And I don't know, to be very honest, I don't know how. I think it's God, because in my head I could be able to process all these things. I remember saying to myself, I can't tell him what has happened, because if I tell him and he's with his mom and he's driving, he'll get confused. His mom may start screaming and he may get into an accident himself. He'll not be able to reach me because he would be the only one who would be able to reach me fast, because my dad was all the way in Utawala.
Yeah.
So that's what my head was telling me. So yeah, you know, I finish with the phone, I give the person the phone back. But now the owner of the phone, this I was told later, called him again. Like, uko wapi? Kuja, unajua msichana amepoteza mkono.
Yeah.
And so now, hey, that's what I was avoiding. Thank God he didn't get into an accident, but you know, now the panic came.
I know.
Because now you're there. Anyway.
Sometimes how we pass information.
Yes, and that's why when I told him, I didn't want to tell him this has happened, because I wanted him to, you know, to come calmly and then be able to process it well, so that even when he's able to call my dad or anybody else, he'll be able to do it not as a panicked person. Because even by the time he was calling my dad, he was telling me he was already crying. So you see, so after the phone call, I became dizzy. So somebody helped me to sit down. And then in my head, I remember asking them, nileteni handbag yangu. So they went to the bus, said looking for my handbag, brought it to me. And then now they also had they said helping me looking for to look for my phone. So they were bringing phones in yako, apana. And then I also asked them to, unaweza niletea mkono nikae nayo hapa.
Dear.
So that when we go to hospital, I don't know, honestly, I don't know why I asked for that. But I asked, wait, unaweza niletea ikae hapa. So it was put next to me.
You had some boldness, some strength.
Yeah.
The way key.
When I look back at it now, I think God gave me the strength for that moment. Because if I was to become weak at that moment, I would not be able to handle what would come ahead. Because you know, I've lost my arm. My life has literally changed
at that moment.
And if I become weak at this point, everything else is going to become completely, like I won't be able to handle the changes that are going to happen after that. So I thank God that I thank God that I'm born again, because I wouldn't imagine how somebody who's not born again would be able to handle such a situation. Like honestly, I don't know how people who don't have God handle situations, because sometimes you need something bigger than you to be able to handle situations. Because when I was there, I blacked out. I lost my consciousness because I was losing blood. Blood was pouring out like maji na mogeka kutoka kwa mfereji. It was literally pouring, and I could feel it pouring, and the smell and everything. And you know the funniest part is that the way Kenyans are, because I remember there were women who were like standing behind me, and no one decided to help me to say, dear, can we help this girl to prevent the blood from? No one helped me to do that. I could just hear wanawake behind me saying, msichana ameumia, aki msichana woi, msichana ameumia, msichana amepoteza mkono. Then in my head, of course, I was very weak. There was nothing I could be able to do. But I wish somebody would have at least tried to, you know, can we help, try, stop? Yeah.
Something like that.
But now, as God would have it, somebody gave out their car. Somebody who had parked their car somewhere next to where the accident occurred. I think he was actually getting his car washed. So he saw the accident. He said, hey, acha nipatiane gari yangu, I'll take them to hospital. It was not a RAV4, what is it? It was a Noah. So he gave out his car. He said, I'll take some people to hospital. Awameumia sana. So the next thing I know, I was being carried like on fours because of the nature of my injury. They couldn't. People were still scared.
Utashika wapi?
Yeah, because I remember someone was holding my legs. Someone here, and then someone else was like nyuma on my back. They were very careful on the way they handled me, carried me. Na mimi ni nani? Msisahau mkono yangu.
Oh dear.
Tukenda nayo mpaka hospitali. Thank God, there was a hospital nearby, Metropolitan Hospital. So the guy rushed us. Like it was literally like 5 minutes away from where the accident happened. And I've never met that gentleman again. I've never been able to meet him again. But that gentleman, like he took it as his own emergency because his hazards were on when he was driving, alikuwa full speed when he was driving, and then he was honking all the way. Like he was literally honking all the way so that people could know there's something that has happened. So yeah, you need to get out of them.
That's how God sends angels.
To be very honest, I think that's how he does it, because in no time, because you know the way he was going, it literally alerted the drivers on the road. There's something that has happened, and you need to move away from this car. So we got to the hospital, and then of course, literally we went to the casualty immediately. And so the other people in the car was not the only person. But now when we were on the way, I remember everyone else was crying. I remember there's a lady who was just crying. I think she had hurt her arm, I don't know. But she was crying, there was another person crying. But for me, I was just silent the whole way. I think for me, I just needed to get to the hospital. But now because there's a lot of blood, I remember I threw up everything I had eaten. So we get to the hospital, get to the casualty, because I think that the Noah was God sent, because you know with the Noah both doors on both sides open. So because the way the car was parked, the other people were removed first. But then there's a nurse who came and saw, what's happening? Chani kuje nisaidie his side. So she opened the door and then she saw me. I remember she went back, now came with a stretcher. I could see panic in her face, but she was very, very calm. Like she didn't show like that she's afraid or anything. Because she helped me, took the arm, wrapped it in a disposable paper, then rushed me to the casualty place. And then funny enough, I was put where my bed was put was just next to the door. And
I remember I came to see you the following day.
Yeah, you came to see me in the ICU.
Yeah.
But now in the casualty, like I think it's because they were told there are other people who are coming. So I think they were arranging people so that the other people could get space. So I was put like next to the door. The bad part about that is because the nurses were rushing in and out, so the curtain was mostly open. And because people have heard that the accident has happened, so they're coming to check their people. So many people were coming in and out of the casualty place. And what does that mean? The first person that people were seeing was me. You. And when they see me, what do? What wana shake vichwa, wengine wanalia. So for me, it was a lot of discouragement, because at this moment, I'm just thinking, oh my God, what is this? Like, how bad is it? Because for me, in my head...
it's that bad.
And for me, in my head, I don't want to tell myself it's this bad. Because I think for me, because of the way life has happened, I try not to look at life as if it's a bad thing. Because I know that if I got through this, I'd be able to get through this also. So I never panic at first.
You really have your uishe moments.
Yeah, I think I go through it, then tunaenda kuishe baadaye. So nikiwa hapo, a friend of mine who mwenye tulipatana kwa line, he comes in because he was also in the accident. So he comes in and I think he had a head injury. But sasa, he comes to see how I'm doing, because when he got out of the bus, he tells me that he saw me when I was seated there, and he could see that I've already blacked out. So he called Faustin and even his brother and some other friends to try to get my family to the hospital. So when he comes to the hospital, because he never got anyone to help him to come to, he took a matatu, akakuja kwa hospitali. And the reason actually he came to the hospital was to check on me, not even for himself. So when he comes to sit next to me, nurses wanafukuza. Because then I remember begging the nurses, please. Because for me at that moment, I needed a familiar face so that I don't panic. Because you know when the nurses and doctors are saying these medical terms, they end up forgetting and say the truth there. you know, they can state the truth there. And at that moment, even if you know the truth, but sometimes you want a familiar face so that you're able to be encouraged. I remember begging them, like, Aki tafadhali, please let him stay with me. But they said no. But Cesar, the funniest part is, Faustin comes a few minutes later, because he was not very far. He comes a few minutes later, and I don't know how he knew what to say so that he could be allowed to come in. Because, you know, in such a situation, only family members could be allowed. And for him, even if we're engaged, we're not married, so there's no way he could be allowed to stay there. But when he comes, he says, I'm her husband. Wow. I'm her husband, I'm her husband, I'm her husband, I'm her husband. And because they can see a ring on my finger, you know, at that moment, they can't be able to differentiate, is it an engagement ring, is it a wedding ring? And he's let to stay there with me. And by this time, he's already called my dad, because my dad came way later. But now, you see, he was able to stay with me. And for he tells me that he was very scared when he saw me, but when he was with me, he really had a brave face. Because as much as I was holding it together, at some point there was panic that was coming.
Definitely.
At some point, because of the way, because the curtain is still open and people are looking, wananiangalia, wanaangalia kando, wanalia wengine. So it was a very scary moment. And then I think there's a doctor who came to look at the arm, and I remember him just saying, this cannot be salvaged.
On your face?
I don't think he was speaking to me. I think he was talking to the nurses. He didn't think I would hear. Yeah, I just heard, this cannot be salvaged. So by this time, you know, because Faustin is there, they've known that he's the husband, so he's the one who's being given all the information regarding what's happening. So he was being told, you know, this cannot happen, because the way the amputation happened, it was a traumatic amputation. Yes. So literally, the arm broke off, like it tore off after the accident. So the way first of all, the bone broke, the nyama and everything. And even when I look at because when I was in theater later, people took pictures of the arm trying to get second and third opinions. The way the arm had been injured, to be very honest, there was no way it was going to be sewn back, because ilikuwa imeraruka. Like, what I thank God now when I think about them is that I didn't get to see what happened. And I didn't feel the pain, because I felt pain. Pain came like a week later. I was not in pain for like a week when I was still in hospital. So we are there, Faustin is being told everything. I need to be rushed to theater and all that. Those deposits that needed to be paid, I was not involved in that. All I know, I was taken to theater. And when we were on our way to theater, I became so scared, because the stories I've had with theater, and being a person who has watched Grey's Anatomy so much, I don't see people coming out of theater. So in my head, I'm like, nimepelekwa the end. This is because I was so scared. And I remember when we were on, because the casualty is on ground floor, and I think the theater is on 5th floor. So I was taken to the lift on the stretcher, and on the way, I remember just asking Faustin, please pray for me, please pray for me. And he tells me that I was also asking him, do you think I'll make it? Do you think I'll make it? I don't remember asking him that, but he was telling me that I kept on asking him that, but I remember asking him to please pray for me. Because by that time, my dad had not even come. My brother was not even there yet. So I was taken to theater. Of course, I don't remember what happened, because I was sedated. And then I woke up. I was woken up later after coming from theater. Now after the wound had been cleaned and all. And yeah, it could not be salvaged. Yeah, it could not be salvaged, because it was a traumatic amputation, the nature of the injuries and all.
So at this point, let me ask, emotionally, where were you?
To be very honest, I was not panicked. I was very calm. Because I was not feeling I was very calm. And I don't think it's the calmness that comes from me as Veronica. I don't think I'm that calm as a person. I think it's you know, the peace that surpasses all human understanding. I think that was what God gave me at that point. Because even after leaving theater, when people came to see me later, because very few people were allowed that night to see me, I think, I don't know, there's somebody who came and they were crying, and I remember telling them, it's going to be okay. So I'm still on and off, at silly what's happening, but I remember telling them, it's going to be okay. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. And the whole time I was even in hospital, I was never panicked. Like, I remember the one time I broke down is when I was in the ICU, because the ICU was tough. Apparently, when you leave theater, you have to be taken to the ICU to be monitored. And you know, in the ICU, I was the only person who was awake. I was with people who are not awake, people who are unconscious, people who are being fed by tubes. Like, you know, that's why I was counting my blessings. I'm like, I'm not this bad. That's why, even when I was there, I remember asking the nurses, Aki, please, I need to be taken to the ward, because mimi siko babaya kama hawa, mimi niko sawa. And I remember trying to do things for myself, but I needed to be monitored, because after the accident, I lost most of my blood, because I think my HB levels were at like 4 point. And if I'm not wrong, your HB levels need to be at like 10 or 12 for a normal person. So they still needed to monitor me because my blood was down. I had already gone through transfusions when I was in theater, but I still needed more blood. So that's why they needed to monitor me. But for me as a person, I was very calm. It was just the whole situation around being in the ICU that was affecting me, not what has actually happened to me.
So, okay, here we are, a very strong Vero, because I remember I came to the ICU to see you, and I took less than 5 minutes.
Because you were more panicked than I was.
Took less than 5 minutes and I was out, but I remember we prayed and I could see the smile on your face. You see, you never seemed like was she this kind of a girl. And that, I think, when I left there, I was so hopeful that you will pull through, and I'm glad we are here today, like 2 years later.
Yes.
And going home, definitely the adjustments you had to make, and the reality now hits.
Yes.
That this is my new status, this is my new way of doing life,
yes,
and I have to make the adjustments.
Yes.
So how was that for you?
It was very difficult. It was very difficult. And even not even getting home, even in the hospital, because of the way the hospital has assumed, in literal sense, I became a disabled person. So the way everyone has perceived it is I've become a different abled person, so I'm not able to do things for myself. So even when I was in the hospital, I was not in the ICU. First of all, I could not even leave the bed. Everything, I was being cleaned on the bed and all that. But even when I was in the ward, I was not allowed to go shower like other people. The nurses would come, clean me and all that, because they said I'm not adjusted enough. But then, when I went home, it was difficult to adjust, but then the first thing I remember is, now I'm not in hospital, no one is going to control me. So even when I went home, I was able to even take a normal bath by myself, to everyone's shock, because everyone was like, no, you need to try, nini, you still need some help. Me, I'm like, I've already gone through the shame of being bathed in the hospital. Then again, I come at home, I told them, no, I will do it. And I figured out ways, like I should after Atakani's told, we will figure out a way, but I will do this by myself. So from the beginning, yes, it was tough, because there are obvious things that you can't do.
Yeah.
There are very obvious things that you can't do. But from the beginning in my head, I knew that I'm not going to treat myself as if I'm not able to do things for myself.
I love the fighting spirit in this girl.
And sometimes I look back, sometimes when I'm going through the motions and I'm feeling like life is overwhelming, I ask myself, how did I get there? How did I pull myself to the point that I told myself that nothing is going to hold me back? But going back, strength of God. Like, sometimes we look at the Bible you know, we read verses, all that. Like, we read the verses and say, you know, God strengthens us and all this and all this. But when you're in that actual position where you need the strength, when you need the peace, when you need, you know, you need all these things that you need, is when you'll actually realize that, you know, yes, God is your strength. Like, he's the one who gives you strength, not your own strength. Like you don't live life, based on how strong you are. It's because of the strength that God empowers you. Because I remember even when I went home, somebody was telling me, how are you able to do all these things? And she had talked to a doctor friend of hers. Akamwambia, hey, she's doing all that. In a normal condition, even medically, that's not possible. Because people take even close to an year to be able to adjust and be able to do things like that. But for me, I think in my mind, I told myself, I'm not going to sit down and let people, they're going to be doing things for me. Although there are still things, like, of course, I couldn't like even cut I could not be able to handle a knife from that point. And at that point, God placed people in my life to come and assist me. I remember the friends of mine who came to live with me, literally live with me. They would cook for me. They would they would like do things for me. Like everything that I needed to be assisted with, their friends who would come. And what they did is that they would do like rotations. Leo uya kwa hapa for 2 days, or mingine. They do that weekly, so that they would be there for me. Yeah.
Wow, I like the support system that was around you, because without that support system, then things would have become really hard for you.
Yeah.
With making these adjustments and trying to figure out how to do life in a different way.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you yourself come to terms with mkono ndio hii itarudi? Where did they? Let me ask, how did you now come to the place of agreeing for them to dispose it, or what happened?
I don't even think I was consented. Like I gave consent. I think I've never been. I should ask my dad or Faustin if they gave consent. But from what I've heard is that when it's in such a position, the hospital disposes the body part that has been amputated. But I don't remember. Yeah, I think somebody gave consent on my behalf.
Yes.
Because even, with theater, somebody else consented on my behalf. Yeah.
Definitely. So going back now to work, after, of course, having made the adjustments at home, what was it for you the first day you get to work? A different Vero now, with a different kind of, this is your working arm, it is not there. So how quick were you able to make the adjustments at your workspace?
So with my workspace, first of all, I really thank God for my employer, because as soon as the accident happened, because Faustin had to go inform her in the hospital because I'd lost my phone and there was no way I was going to inform her. So when he informed her, she came to see me then, because I got into the accident on Monday. So on Wednesday, she came to see me around in the afternoon. And the first thing she told me is, this does not affect your employment with me.
Wow.
So first of all, that was hope, because of course I was not thinking about employment at that moment, but the fact that she said it was, an encouragement to know that, there's hope. But then now, because I stayed home for like around 2 months, I think before the end of the last month, like halfway through the last month, she called me to her office. And I remember we had a conversation. She was asking me, how are you doing? Is the wound healed and all that? And then she was asking me, when do you think you'll be able to come back to work? At that moment, I think I need to say this. In as much as I felt like, I'm able to adjust with things, there's something about being at home for so long, especially when you're recovering from something, even childbirth.
Yeah.
There's something about being at home for so long that I don't know if it's giving up to some extent. You feel like you've given up even going to work. You feel like you don't have the capacity to go back to work. I was getting to that point. It wasn't so obvious because in those 2 months, I used to go to hospital 2 times a week. So my routine was really hospital, home. But so in terms of work, I was not really thinking about it. So when she called me to her office is when we began having that conversation, and it even opened my mind, oh yeah, baby, I need to go back to work. This was not a forever thing. I was not to stay home forever. So what we agreed was that in the 2 weeks before I go back to the office, what we do would be that she'd send me work from at home. Then I work on some things and send her, and then I think within after 2 weeks I could be able to go back to the office. So thankfully she was very gracious that we started. When I went back to work, I first did 3 times a week, half days, and then
Bringing you slowly back
yes,
to work.
and then I came back to work slowly. So I think because of the way the transition was very good, it wasn't so difficult.
Yeah.
Because my job involves a lot of typing. And so because I started the typing when I was at home, at a comfortable environment, I was able, when I'm coming back to the office, yes, it's a different laptop, we say, but I was able to adjust slowly to the, to the change and all that. And thankfully, even if we were not married then, Faustin agreed to be taking me to work and picking me up every evening.
Faustin, we salute you. You're a true gentleman. Many would have responded differently to that new season of life. We salute you and may the Lord bless you.
Yes, so because of that, I was not worried about, because first of all, when you've gone through an accident, when you've gone through a traumatic thing, there's a post-traumatic, not depression per se, but there's that fear, the post-traumatic fear. So because of all these systems that people have created around me, I was not put in a position where I would be able to fear, because if it's going to work, I don't have to think, oh my God, I have to get into a matatu again. I didn't have to think about that. I didn't have to think about, oh my God, how am I supposed to go to, how am I supposed to do things at work, because I've been weaned slowly. So I think because of those things, I was able to go adjust and go back to work well.
Are there moments when you feel like you have some sort of, I don't know if to call it a meltdown, your low moments that really, really put you, unasikia umeisha nguvu kiasi? And how do you handle those moments?
Yes, they do, because I'm a normal human being. I am flesh and bones. They do happen because in as much as, let's say, for me as Veronica, I accepted, and took life as it is. My family did the same. Because I did that, the environment around me does not necessarily move with me.
Yes.
The people around me, like if I meet strangers, they've not accepted, they've not gone through the journey with me. So because of that, I'll give an example. Shortly after I left the hospital, when I used to do the weekly visits for cleaning and all, there's one day I passed by the supermarket after leaving the hospital. And so when I entered the supermarket, it was a very hot day, so I didn't even have let's say a poncho on. I didn't think I needed to, because in the hospital, no one was looking at me. We are all sick. So if you look at me weird, you also have your own, sickness. So I walk into this supermarket, like I was minding my own business. I didn't think there was anything about me that needed to be alerting or anything. So I'm walking into the supermarket, and then some staff in the supermarket started looking at me. And then they start whispering. I remember seeing them whispering to each other. And then the worst part is, I wish it was just whispering. Mwingine anaitana, kuja, kuja. And they start looking at me, and then they're all whispering. And then it hit me, oh, it's because of my one arm. And at that moment, it wasn't so bad because it was the first time that happened. And you know, I was quickly going to do this, then I leave. But then that was not the only time that happened in a supermarket. Same supermarket. Brand, not
a different branch, the same brand.
Yeah, the same brand. It happened again. And there was this one that was so bad where I was getting into a supermarket and you know the soldiers who check you. So akaniambia, madam, you know mikono zako. Okay, you know my one arm. And then even my stamp, like literally my stamp was up. Akaniambia, madam, nimekuambia uinue. And you know, she was not even being kind. She was like, madam, nimekuambia inua mkono. Kama nimeinua. Kaniambia, mimi sioni hujainua mkono mwingine.
Oh dear.
Nikamwambia, sina mkono mwingine. And then I walked away. The worst part is, she didn't apologize. It's just later that because I was with Faustin, when Faustin went to tell her that was not right. She came when I had already gone to the car, that's when she apologized. But that hurt.
I can only imagine.
And it didn't happen with only those two occurrences. There was another occurrence also in a supermarket, Pia. And then I think the worst one was there was this day we were going to have lunch with a friend at, by this time I think we were already married. We're going to have lunch with a friend in town, and you know, cause town na parking, so we were parking the car at kunaitwaje, Lifestyle, where Lifestyle used to be. I've forgotten
There's
the name.
Naivas now.
Yeah, I've forgotten the name of
the parking. That's parking space. I know. Yeah, we can get it.
So we were parking the car huko, and Faustin has parked the car there before, but now I've never been with him when he's parking the car. Apparently, when you are parking the car and you have a passenger, the passenger has to come out. We both didn't know that. So we are in the car, and then now the lady is like, acha atoke. So me nikasema, okay, ni sawa nitatoka. And then at that moment, I was just wearing a t-shirt. And actually, first of all, I was even on earphones. Remember her saying, "Mwambie huyu atoke." So nikasema, okay, ni sawa. So I was taking my poncho to wrap myself, nitoke, because it was a bit chilly. Then when she sees me coming out, she sees that I don't have an arm. Akasema, hapana, madam, rudi. And then what happens next is what was very hurting. Akaanza kushautia. I think there was another soldier mbele. Akaambia soldier, acha wapite. Wewe kijana, ingia kwa gari. Disability, disabled. I remember I just kept quiet and started crying. I broke down because I didn't get, for me, I don't know if that's the case. I thought disabled parking is for if the driver is a disabled person. It's not necessarily about the passenger. So I didn't get why you okay.
And making it a big deal.
And why are you shouting? And like, the passenger being a disabled person has nothing to do with where the person is supposed to park, unless you know it's something that's in. So that was very heartbreaking, and because of those experiences, there are times that I find myself breaking down.
Yeah.
And for a very long time, even when I went back to work, I could not even wear like blazers. I used to wear my shirt and my trousers, but wear a poncho on top, so that if I'm being sent to court, no one would have to look at me in a way that they notice that I have a missing arm. And there's a way I'd put my poncho that cover the longer part of the poncho is on this side, so that it doesn't look like there's something missing. And so because of that, I sort of lived in a bondage. A bondage where I don't feel free to move around because people will see me different. And yeah, so to answer your question, because of how supportive the people around me have been, I've not gotten meltdowns because of that, but because of the reaction of
the outsiders. Let's call them outsiders.
Yeah. And what I've come to understand and put it in my head with time is that I can never change what anyone else will say or how they will react to me. It's up to what I decide to say about myself, how I choose to react. So nowadays, even like when I go to court with my boss and I'm, say, in my blazer and, you know, there's space on this side of the arm and people are staring, I feel their stares, but it's no longer the, oh my God, why are they looking at me like that? I think, although I think it comes with time, that, you know, you have to, your confidence, mental muscle is adjusted. And yeah.
Wow, we really thank God that you made it out of the accident, and your story will be a blessing to anyone going through a difficult time in their lives, a defining moment, because right there things change, life changes completely, and a lot comes into it. But we appreciate that God was in this story all through. From when this guy came to pick you people from the accident scene, to me that was God sent. And the support system that has been there with you all along, and as you're confessing, they have made life so easy for you that it really never gives you a meltdown moment, but the outsiders seem to give you that moment. But we trust God that that too will come to pass. But you are one whose story gives hope and resilience and keeping on. What's your one word as we close that you'd say to anyone who's probably entered into the news, let's call it a new season, a difficult new season, and they're trying to figure out, why me? What is going to happen after this, with all the fears, the anxiety? What would be your word of encouragement to them as we close?
I think I'd like to say that it's okay to feel all the anxiety that you're feeling. It's okay to feel all the pain, because what most people, or I don't think it's said enough, that, you know, if you look at the definition of grief, like it's sort of like mourning. We say grief is mostly like, you know, losing someone. We equate grief to, you know, when somebody has actually died. But when you look at the dictionary meaning of grief, it's losing something.
Yes.
It can be a job, it can be a relationship, it can be whatever you've lost, whatever, like, you know, you could even have lost your faith. You're struggling in your faith. You know, you're grieving because you still have questions with God and all that. So it's okay to go through that moment of pain, because it's actual grief, and it's okay. And if you ignore the feelings that you're feeling, itakuja baadaye. And it's better to handle it now when you're feeling it than ignore it and then it comes to haunt you later. And you know, when it comes to haunt you later, it comes up in different forms. It may show up as depression, it may show up as, you know, whatever. But even as you're going through the motions of, you know, the pain and all that, know that you're never alone. Even if the whole world decides to, you know, turn against you and not be on your side, God is always there.
Amen.
And you know, the Bible says that He's closer to those who are brokenhearted. He's closer to those who are wounded. It's not a hoax. It's not just something that's written to make the Bible look pretty. It's actual facts. But sometimes it's difficult to be able to comprehend that if you don't to even, like, you know, you don't want to think about God at that moment. It's a difficult, because I've gone through my own, you know, my own situation where I'm not able to pray, but I know that God is there. I know that God is working with me through this situation. So you're not alone.
Yes.
And God will carry you through. As long as you know you've been faithful doing His work, as long as you're getting born again, even being faithful with His work is just an addition. But you know, the way when you just get born again, you become His child, you become a son, you become a daughter of God, and He becomes your father. And because He becomes your father, you never walk this world alone. You can be an orphan, you can be a widow, you can be a widower, you can be all the terms that the world wants to label you as. But you're never alone, because God is with you. And because He's with you, He will show up as Himself and he will also show up as other people. Just as from my story, there are people who have shown up in my life, and I'm not quick to say, hey, this person is a good person. I'm quick to remember that this is God, because my family could have easily said, ai, msichana sijisort na maisha yake. Fortune could have easily, you know, moved on, looked for another girl to marry who's fully able, but there's something he said to somebody, because I remember so many people when I was in hospital were telling him, ati, unajua, don't leave this girl, you know, she's the same one that you love, nini. But there's something that he told them, that she's still the same person that I knew. The only thing that has changed about her is just losing her arm. Everything that she is, everything that I have, everything that I love about her is still there.
Wow.
So, and I don't think that it has to do, yes, Postin is a very good person, but it has to do with the God that he loves, the God that he serves, the God that he walks with. So know that you're never alone, and God does not leave his people alone. God does not, and he doesn't put you through situations so that he can leave you to suffer, because at the end of the day, he does not let his name to be shamed. Why would he let you go through something ndio upotee hivyo? Because at the end of the day, the glory goes back to him. The testimony is about how good and a perfect father he is to us.
Amen. Wow. Woo. Okay. I'm actually feeling encouraged. Sijui tuokote sadaka. Tuweke pay bill number. Tutoe sadaka, sijui tutaita 315, lakini we bless the Lord for you, Vero. Your story is an encouragement to many, because this life will usher us into new seasons.
Yeah.
So what you do when the unexpected happens, and the fact that you're saying hang on to God, don't do life alone, is something we need to keep repeating and repeating. Don't do life alone.
Yeah.
Because God is the one who is able to see the heart, in the heart, the H-U-R-T in your heart.
Yeah.
And he's the only one who can heal it and mend it. Because we can speak it out, and it is important to speak it out as you are, but the final person who can bring healing completely is him and him alone. So don't do life alone, even when life offers you and hands you new seasons that you never expected. And I always like to end my sessions with a quote, and this is what I have to say. It's your reaction to adversity and not the adversity itself that determines how your life story will develop. So you have to have the muscle, as Vero said, to face your new season that you've gotten into. And of course, with the help of the Most High God. Otherwise, with that we say, God bless you, and keep checking, because we have this and more stories coming up. See you.